Class is now in session. I am Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing the Sharks game between the Sharks and the Predators, in which the Sharks managed to come from behind in the third period, something I didn't think I'd be saying while I was watching this one, and they ended up winning 5-4 in regulation, which was even more of a surprise. They were trailing 4-2 at the end of the second period, and it wasn't looking that great, but they managed to get goals from Dillon, from Joe Pavelski, and from Brent Burns. Brent Burns coming pretty late in the third period to take the win 5-4. Other goal scorers for the Sharks, Meyer and Hertl, while goal scorers for the Predators, Arvidsson twice, Forsberg, as well as Craig Smith. Now, just in general, comments about this game, I thought the Sharks did very good on the special teams. I thought they had a very strong power play. I thought the penalty kill was also very good. Otherwise, the Predators had maybe the majority of the chances at even strength, I would probably say. Really the main culprit of that for the Predators was that first line for them, Arvidsson, Forsberg, and Johansson. That was probably the best line in the entire game. I don't think any line really came close to them. You know, Smith, Fiala, and Turris, pretty not that great, really. Bonino, Hartman, and Yarncroke were okay at times, but still not much. Ronaldo, Salomaki, and Sissons, not much to say there. For the Sharks, it was mostly that second line, I would say. I thought Couture, Meyer, and Hertl were quite good. I thought Chartier, Goudreau, and Carlson had a decent game. Pavelski, Kane, and LeBanc didn't start very well, but I thought they certainly picked it up in the third period, of course, with Pavelski getting that goal and everything. And so just in general, it wasn't a perfect game from the Sharks by any means, especially if you look back at the games against the Sabres and the Islanders and their two previous ones in which, the Sharks played very, very well and they ended up cruising to pretty simple wins. Of course, against a team like the Predators, the top team in the league, it was never going to be this easy. I didn't foresee it going as such in a Sharks win and then winning 5-4 with 3 unanswered goals in the third, but still a hard-fought win that definitely had a playoff pace, and that's something I do want to mention. The first 8 games, I guess, the Sharks have already played so far, there hasn't even been that much sort of pace. I mean, the Ducks and the Kings, there was somewhat, but, the games against the Islanders, the Rangers, the Devils, it didn't seem like the Sharks were playing really with too much pace. Even in their wins against the Sabres and the Islanders, they were sort of slower type of cruise control type of victories, I guess you could say. But this game against the Predators definitely had a lot of speed, it had a lot of skill, there were definitely a lot of moving parts, and some players struggled, but some players also thrived in that. So to start off, I would like to talk about Burns and Carlson. Both of these players, Carlson had a very good first period, I could say. Both of these players were quite strong offensively, which is something that you like to see. Obviously, Burns with the goal, he also had an assist, I believe, and Carlson ended up with an assist on the Burns goal. So just in general, I thought these two were very good offensively. The struggle was defensively. Both of them had many misplays. Burns, multiple giveaways. Sometimes he just looked completely lost in the defensive zone, which is definitely something you see a lot from Burns. Carlson as well. Not as many giveaways as Burns, but still multiple times looking somewhat lost in the defensive zone. On one of the goals especially, he didn't really cover his guy, and that led to the Predators' goal. And so not the best game from those two defensively, and really not the best game defensively from most of the Sharks. Well, I guess Vlasic you can add into the Burns-Carlson. Otherwise, I thought Ryan, Dillon, who I'll get to a bit later, and Braun were all pretty solid defensively. It was mostly just the 3 top guys for the Sharks that had just one too many mistakes. Jones had a very solid game, and it wouldn't seem like that, as obviously the Predators did score 4 goals, but their 4 goals, he basically had 0 chance on any of them. The Smith was a 2-on-1, bar down kind of shot. Arvidsson's first goal was some sort of insane breakaway. Arvidsson's second goal, he was left basically all alone in front of the net, and so Jones really didn't have many chances. But one thing that we haven't seen much from Jones, we have in the past couple of games that the Sharks have won, but earlier on in the season, he made the saves that the Sharks needed him to make. There was no easy goal that they managed to score. A lot of times Subban would wind it up for a shot. Easy save from Jones, no rebound. And so he looked calm, he looked confident, and even in a game he let in 4 goals. I thought he was not spectacular, but still very good. Next are the D pairs that I'd like to talk about. As I said, the defense was somewhat struggling during the first couple of periods, and so to come out for the third period, De Boer decided to go back to the tried and true Vlasic Braun pair that the Sharks have been using for multiple years now, and then they ended up putting Carlson with Dillon while keeping Burns with Ryan. Obviously, maybe don't want to change up Ryan's scenery too much as he is still sort of a younger player. But it did seem to work out. I thought, Vlasic and Braun definitely picked it up, and that's probably the reason why the Predators didn't actually manage to score a goal in the third period, especially their empty net defense right at the end with Vlasic and Braun, I thought was superb, basically. The Predators really didn't get much of a chance besides a couple of just shots on net that Jones was able to swallow up. Next is Brendan Dillon, and this is actually sort of a funny story. I saw Brendan Dillon with the puck, behind the net on the shorthanded play, and I said, I thought, Brendan Dillon has actually been having a pretty solid game, he's looked quite good, especially considering some of the other defensemen haven't looked that great. And as I'm thinking this, he goes end-to-end and he manages to score the goal that makes it 4-3, and so it was just sort of a funny story. And Dillon, in the past couple of games, has also looked quite strong, and I think maybe he's benefiting from not playing against the best competition. Obviously, teams are having to match up against both Brent Burns and Erik Carlson. Dillon isn't getting as many minutes as he might have been getting before. And so against weaker competition, it has not only allowed him to be somewhat better defensively, but also has allowed him to somewhat flourish offensively. He's been taking a lot more risks, and I do like to see that out of Brendan Dillon. Next is the special teams. As I mentioned earlier, the Sharks looked very good on the power play, obviously getting 2 of their goals on it, one by Burns and the other by Timo Meier. That first power play in the game that led to the Meier goal was phenomenal. We did see Erik Carlson starting on the power play, interestingly enough, and then Burns later on came on with Carlson still there, but it does seem Vlasic is still involved in the power play, at least somewhat, as he got some time there as well. I'm not sure if Vlasic should be on the power play, but it definitely seems to be something that De Boer enjoys having him there. I don't know if it's for maybe just a bit of a defensive option or if he likes his offensive upside. I'm not sure, but Vlasic is there at the moment. And the penalty kill, especially, the Predators' power play hasn't been great this season, but the Sharks did a good job at shutting him down, even if, you consider that the Craig Smith goal came after an expired power play. But it's hard to say because, it was a bit of a unlucky bounce for the Sharks that, they hit the crossbar with the shorthanded chance and it goes the other way for the 2-1-1. Next, a few other players who I thought, Rook Chartier, I thought has actually looked quite good for the Sharks in the past couple of games. He hasn't really gotten much going for him at any point in terms of points. He doesn't have an assist or a goal, but I have liked his sort of effort. Couture and Meier, I thought, had very good games. Couture, during those first 6 games before the Sharks' 3-game winning streak now, I thought he actually looked not great. He was definitely struggling, and it was a bit worrying. Obviously, Couture has recently signed a massive extension with the Sharks, 8 years, $8 million, and so it was a bit worrying to see him not coming out of the gate strong. Yes, he's not normally sort of an offensive powerhouse in the regular season. It's more of a 60-point, 30-goal kind of guy, but still, it was a bit worrying. But now he's certainly picked it up in these past 3 games. Hopefully he can continue that, and maybe he's done like a bit of self-reflection or something after those first 6 games, because I think he, as much as anyone, realized that he was not playing very well. Timo Meier, as I said, been fantastic, is on I think 6-game point streak so far, and he's looking like a very good player for the Sharks, good top 6 forward. Next is the officiating I want to talk about a bit. Officiating was very rough in this game, certainly. The first call of the game, the Joe Pavelski penalty, that was certainly not a penalty. Obviously, he didn't actually high-stick Subban there. I think Subban got high-sticked by his own guy. Then the Predators took a penalty, and I don't think that one was a penalty either. Maybe a bit of a makeup call from the referees. Later on, you had the delay of game penalty taken by the Sharks bench, which I'm still not sure what it was. I think it was some sort of time wasting on the ice. Maybe they didn't put on the right amount of guys, or they took too long with the icing. I'm not 100% sure what occurred there, but still sort of a weird call, especially when you consider literally every team, every game has some sort of stall tactic to give their guys a few more seconds on the icing. And then, of course, the terrible call at the end against the Predators, in which the high stick came up into Vlasic's face and didn't actually touch him, but they still got the penalty. And, if I was a Predators fan, I would be irate with something like that, especially since the Sharks actually ended up scoring on that power play, which gave them the game-winning goal by Brent Burns. Luckily, I'm not a Predators fan, so I'm not irate, but still, if, the empathy in me is telling me that it was still a terrible call, which means I'm going to chalk up this officiating crew as not very good tonight, and that might be something I end up saying a lot, because it's rare that you see that great officiating, but I won't be too hard on the referees in my reviews. Finally, I'd like to talk about the arena in Nashville, Bridgestone Arena. Multiple times the puck was bouncing around, so the ice didn't seem that great. On the first goal, which was the Victor Arvidsson breakaway type of goal, it bounced over Vlasic's stick, I believe. I don't think he mishandled it, but of course I don't have the perfect review to be able to see that. But still, just in general, the puck was bouncing around a lot. And another thing, I don't want to seem like a party pooper or anything like that, I guess you could call it, but the fans in Nashville are certainly getting into the game. You can say the amount of chanting for Jones, or whenever Saros would have made a save, oh Juice or something like that, and then just chanting in general. It was definitely very loud. It got a bit annoying at times. I guess you want to see your fans get passionate, but certainly one of the louder buildings that I have watched the Sharks play against. But that will do it for this game, an important sort of benchmark type of game for the Sharks. Most of their games to start off the season, besides, the Ducks, but even then, they haven't even looked that great, even with a good record. Most of the games the Sharks have played have been against weaker teams. Only a couple of them, maybe the Ducks and I guess the Devils, will actually make the playoffs, but this was the first major challenge of the season for the Sharks, and it wasn't perfect by any means. It took a Brendan Dillon and Joe Pavelski goals that maybe Saros should have had to actually be able to come back and win this game. But, by April, the Sharks are going to be looking back. They're going to see that they got 2 points, the Predators got 0 points, and that's really all that's going to matter but come playoff time. And so, very good measuring stick game for the Sharks. It seems like they can keep up with a team like the Predators, who, some will say is the top team in the NHL. And so, certainly a good sign for the Sharks moving forward. Class dismissed.